Oh God, this is nerve-wracking. Welcome back to Beyond the Silence, a podcast dedicated to breaking the silence around mental health through honest conversations and real experiences. I'm Jess Strange, and today's episode is a very personal one for me. We often hear people talk about grief after losing someone, but not enough people talk about how watching someone you love slowly become unwell can really affect your mental health too. In this episode, I'll be speaking openly about my experience, the emotional impact it's had on me, and how it affected my mental health, relationships, and everyday life. This conversation may get difficult at times, but I hope by sharing my experience, it helps others who may be struggling feel less alone. This episode contains discussions surrounding mental health, illness, emotional distress, grief, and personal experiences that some listeners may find upsetting or triggering. The purpose of this conversation is to raise awareness and encourage honest discussion around mental health, and please listen with care and take a break if needed. If you're struggling or affected by anything discussed in this episode, support is available through organisations such as Mind, Samaritans, or other trusted healthcare professionals. So this whole project started through my own experience with mental health. Unfortunately, last year my mum got diagnosed with chronic heart failure very unexpectedly, and this was kind of the start of my mental health journey for me. I've struggled with anxiety for years, probably since college, which was way too many moons ago. But last year, after the horrible summer we had, I feel like my care for myself really went downhill, and I actually got diagnosed with depression. So basically, back to the start, the whole story started at the end of July. So my mum had been feeling quite unwell prior to this. She'd been in and out of the doctors who had prescribed her antibiotics for chest infections, and nothing really seemed to work. And I remember a Wednesday afternoon, I got home from work and my mum wasn't at home, which is very uncommon because my mum sticks to a strict schedule. So I remember texting her asking where she was, and she said she was at the hospital, which took me by surprise. And then she also mentioned that my dad was with her, which kind of made me realise it's probably a bit more serious than what I'm thinking, but we had no idea what was coming. Came home from the hospital on Wednesday, and she had to go back in Thursday for some more scans, and then we left on Thursday, and we were told to come back at 2 p.m. for a echocardiogram. And then on Friday was the day where everything kind of turned. So I went in with my mum, and I remember being sat in the same day emergency care unit, and she had a list of things to ask the doctors, and we were expecting she was going to have a Friday day out. She was all glammed up, and we was half just expecting some medication and be sent on our way. But yeah, things massively changed. So we got taken into a separate room by a man in a suit, which was kind of like the first realisation of like, oh, this might be a little bit serious. But we still wasn't expecting what was to come. And yeah, he told us that she had chronic heart failure and she'd need a valve replacement, which I remember at the time being stood in the room with my mum, and it was kind of like, it wasn't even real life. I remember she was sat down, I was stood up, and she was like stroking my leg to kind of give me a like it's okay type of thing. And I think we were both still like in disbelief of what was actually being said to us. My mum's probably the healthiest person that I know, and yeah, we were both just trying to stay strong for each other. Yeah, it was a shock to the system, if I'm being honest. We left the room. My mum went back to the room that she was in previously, and I went downstairs and called my dad. Luckily he was working at the Mansion House in town at the time, so he shot straight from work on his bike to come see us. I rang my boyfriend and my cousin, who reminded me that my mum is a strong person and it will get sorted. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, everything between there and surgery is kind of a bit of a blur. So my mum, unfortunately, was actually left in a chair for about 4 days with heart failure, and she had to sleep in I don't know what they call it, a doctor room. Like, there was a computer and everything in there. On the 4th of August, she was sent to Ward 32, which is where she got a bed. On the 6th, we were actually told that her heart looks really good and they're looking at discharging her, which at that moment in time was an honest, it was a relief. We were thinking, oh my God, thank God. But then on the 7th, which was the day after, we got told there's absolutely no chance of being discharged. We were told that my mum was one of the poorest patients in York Hospital. The valve was extremely narrow, the heart muscles were very weak, and she was not going to get discharged until she'd recovered from the surgery. And then from there on, we knew the surgery wouldn't be happening in York and she'd have to get transferred to Leeds or Hull. So anyway, it came down to Hull. There was a lot of miscommunications in between, which just kind of left us really lost. And I remember at the time we were so confused with what's actually going on. And at the time I was actually working, I was running my own business, and I had a lot of outgoings and nothing coming in because I wasn't at work, because mentally being told that your mum's got heart failure, I can't go on, I can't continue to sit, especially not in the beauty industry. You've got to make sure your conversations are there, and obviously you want to be chatty with people, but the last thing on my mind was making people's brows look nice. I'm not going to lie, it was a very tricky time for me. And at the time I didn't realise it was really affecting my mental health. I'd spend all my days travelling to and from the hospital or beside my mum in the hospital bed, and I would forget to eat. I would not shower, wouldn't look after myself, and I just became such a sad person overall. I avoided everybody unless if you were in my small circle. I barely saw anyone, I didn't speak to people, and yeah, that was the first start where it all kind of went downhill. But at the time I didn't even realise it was happening because my mind just wasn't with it. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to skip through all the ins and outs of everything that happened in between. But anyway, my mum got transferred to Castle Hill Hospital, which is where the surgery was taking place. And there was dates thrown out there that were then pulled back. And yeah, there was a lot of up and down with what was happening. But Castle Hill was absolutely brilliant. It was a journey to get there, but it was absolutely brilliant, an amazing hospital. And I remember heavily the day before my mum's operation. So there's, like I said, there was a few things that happened in between. We had to wait for other things to come up, other scans to be had. She had to get her teeth checked before she could have an operation, and so the date was kind of up in the air. And then I remember one day, I think it was a Wednesday, I was travelling to Castle Hill with my grandma and granddad in the car, and my mum rang our family group chat on FaceTime crying her eyes out. And obviously there's been so many tears throughout that whole process, so what's going on now, what's happening, that was what was going through our heads. And my mum literally was just I'm going down for surgery tomorrow, and the tears were of happy tears because we'd had so many confusions, so many miscommunications, and obviously during that time, may I add, this was weeks worth. This wasn't over a week period, this was a long time. So yeah, it was kind of a relief for my mum. So me, my grandma and granddad got to the hospital, and it was all great. I remember a lady coming in who was going to be in theatre with her, doing all the stuff on the side, talking us through what was going to happen. And my mum sat there like she was getting her nails done. My mum, whether she's been through stuff before, so whether she was kind of fine, not even worried about it. But I, on the other hand, I'm terrified of hospitals. So to have all these things being said to my mum about what's going to happen, tubes, the incision down her chest, to have her bone sawn in half and clamped open, to be hooked up to a heart bypass machine, and the machine is going to be keeping her alive, everything was just going through our head. And my mum was sat there oh yeah, cool, she was literally she was getting her nails done. And yeah, it was crazy, but obviously they have to tell you the stats and the chances of things possibly going wrong, which we were aware of. It wasn't a worry, but it was a worry at the same time. But I remember at that point, my dad was coming in and I was going home with my grandma and granddad. And I remember having to say bye to my mum the night before her operation. And it was horrific. I remember, as awful as it is to say, I remember thinking this could be the last time that I speak to my mum. Obviously, nobody wants to think of that. And I never said that. And I think that's probably the first time that I've actually said that out loud. But I was terrified because obviously things can go wrong, And I always think, like, what if we're that small chance that things do go wrong? Thankfully, they didn't. But I had to say bye to her. And I remember it was terrifying to leave my mum in a hospital knowing that, like, what she's going to go through in the morning. And I cried my eyes out and I left the room, and I was with my grandma and granddad, and I remember my grandma trying to distract me. She was like, what are you having for tea? What did you have for breakfast? And she did everything that she could to distract me. But there was so much, like, as much as it was such a sad time, there was so much strength that came from that, because I thought, this is nearly over, like, it's almost done. Anyway, woke up the next day. I can't really remember too much other than me and my dad drove to Castle Hill through... We were told how long the operation is roughly going to take. So we got there for when it should have finished, and we'd gone to intensive care, which is where she was going to be spending some time. And we was ringing bells, and she was still in theatre. And it was an awful waiting period, because we were thinking, right, okay, she's really gone over the time now. Like, where is she? What's going on? And you just don't know anything. It's terrifying. And again, as hard as it is to say, like, you are just thinking of all negative things as much as you're trying to stay positive. You do just think of, but what if? So me and my dad ended up walking around the grounds of Castle Hill looking like absolute losers. We couldn't even think straight. So my dad got a phone call at 1:05 in the afternoon to say that she was out, and the relief that came from that was honestly immense. So we literally ran. My dad doesn't run, but we literally ran to intensive care, which was at the other side of the hospital, and we were ringing the bell like, here for Karen Strange, like, hoping we could be let in. And we weren't allowed in yet. They were trying to get her stable, because there was a few situations, which I'm not going to go into, but there was a few situations that happened, and they were trying to get her stable. So it was actually 2:45 that we were allowed in to see her, so quite a while later. And I remember the woman that came to get us, she was great. My mum had already told her that morning before she went in to theatre that I'm terrified of hospitals and, like, it's going to be a lot for me. So she was kind of just saying, like, there's a lot to take in, but she's safe and she's doing well. Like, she's being monitored, like, she's in a good place. I remember walking into intensive care. I'd never seen anything like it before. Obviously, I've seen it on TV, but, like, that's TV, like, it's not real life. And I remember walking into intensive care, and it was just a huge, huge room with beds all around the outside and a desk in the middle. And just seeing all these strangers hooked up to machines, so upsetting. And then walking over to my mum, it was like something out of a horror movie, but something so magical at the same time. Like, it's hard to explain, but I was speechless for about 2 minutes. Like, I couldn't say anything because I was terrified, but also so relieved at the same time of seeing my mum, and she was alive and she was breathing and she was doing good. I'm not going to lie, it was absolutely horrific, and I'd never, ever, ever would like anybody else to ever see someone they love in intensive care. But it was magical. She was attached to all these, God knows how many different machines that kept beeping at us, and it was crazy. So the lady there actually spoke us through things. Like, we actually do have videos. My mum wanted this process filming. She actually asked if she could have her heart surgery filmed, which was denied, surprisingly. But I've got videos in my camera roll of my mum in intensive care, and like pictures and stuff that she wanted me to film and take just so she could look back on. And those videos now still sit in my camera roll, and I think they forever will. But they're videos that I don't think I'll ever be able to look back on. I think there's been an odd couple of times where I have, but when I have, there's two different emotions that come through. Like, there's so much pain and sadness, but then there's so much proudness and happiness that, like, that happened. Like, she did so well, and she's done amazing in her recovery. So there was a few little problems after the surgery once she was moved out of intensive care. But I had jetted off to Greece because we were supposed to have a family holiday that obviously couldn't go ahead. But me and my boyfriend decided to still go because, like I said, I'd completely lost myself at this point. I was just in such a bad state that I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to speak to people. And it was just such a really hard time for me that I did just need to escape. And I know it's horrible to say because some people can't escape their lives. My mum couldn't escape. Like, there was nothing that could happen. But for me, I knew that my mum was in good hands. She was safe. Everything had been done. Everybody wanted me to go on holiday because it's what I needed. And I'm not going to lie, I'm really glad that I did, because we really just needed the time to escape from life. And also I'd spent God knows how many weeks beside my mum in a hospital, travelling to and from, cleaning the washing, bringing it back, keeping things like alive at home, cooking, cleaning, doing like basically my mum's roles at home, that I wanted to be in a good place for my mum's release from the hospital, so that when she came home, she had somebody in a good place to look after her. Because my dad also was working. So there was a period of time where my dad wasn't at work, and then he went back to work, and then he wasn't again. But then when she came home, I can't fully remember, but I do remember him going back to work. So I was basically just like looking after my mum. And I knew I needed to be in a good place to do that, because if I wasn't in a good place, I couldn't give my mum the best care. So yeah, I decided to go away, and I'm really glad that I did. It really, like I said, helped me escape. But yeah, I wanted to speak about my experience beyond the silence, because I want to encourage people to talk, and I want to help break the stigma around mental health. And I think it's important that you know my story and where I stand. It gives me a face to the brand. It knows people will know that like I've experienced it as well. Like I do understand mental health a lot. And yeah, that was the start of my journey. So I have now I'm on medication, which is going really, really well for me. Thank God. But yeah, I remember at the time thinking like I knew something wasn't quite right. Like this just wasn't everyday life. Everybody doesn't feel like this. It's not normal. I had no motivation. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to avoid people. I just didn't have a drive for absolutely anything. And yeah, I remember speaking to a few people about it. And kind of trying to speak to people, but when people haven't experienced it themselves, they don't really know what to do, what to say, and how to react, which I completely understand, because if you've experienced mental health, you don't understand what they're going through. But then, yeah, it was really hard to figure out what I'm supposed to do, because it can be a really confusing area, because like I wanted help, but then I didn't really know what to do with it. Obviously there's so many things online, but I was kind of just like in denial also. Like I was like, yeah, I'm not depressed, I'm just sad, I've had a bad summer. Fair, I had. Yeah, so I opened up to a really small handful of people, probably only like 2 or 3. And then things happened in between. Other people found out, and at that point I remember telling my mum and my dad about how I was feeling, because it got to a point where yes, mental health was affecting me, but then the way I was affecting other people. Like I wouldn't do things with people. I wouldn't sit in the same rooms as people because I was depressed. I just wanted to be alone. And it was really hard because I didn't want to tell people, but then also I did want to tell people because like the way I was being was affecting other people. So yeah, I did eventually come out and tell my mum, who then told my dad, which yeah, it was heartbreaking. I actually brought it down to both of them. And I then eventually went and I got in contact with the doctors, who I did NHS talking therapies for a bit. And I also got prescribed medication, started on the lower dose, and I've now been up to my dose. And I'm doing really, really well on it. So if you are somebody listening who's struggling with the mental health, or you're not even aware you're struggling with your mental health, I would really advise talking to people. I know it can be really hard to open up to parents or siblings or family members or friends. I know it can be difficult, but like it was the best thing that I did, because to my family was what made me want to get better. So yeah, that kind of pushed me. So I'd really recommend people even just contacting the doctor, let them know how you're feeling. Because yeah, it's such an important thing to make sure you're looking after yourself. And my medication has just really completely fixed me, and I'm annoyed that I didn't start it sooner. I'm annoyed that I didn't reach out sooner, but I'm happy of where I am now and how well I'm doing. So yeah, that was kind of my story. There's probably a lot that I haven't added, but I didn't want this to be too long. But if anybody's got any questions or want to message, there is a Google form in my Instagram bio, which you can fill out completely anonymously. If you want to share your experience, or if you just want to send a message, feel free. But yeah, I'm grateful for anybody that has listened to this. Again, it started as a uni project, but it's more than that to me now. Like, I've got such a drive for it, and I really want to raise a further awareness. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Beyond the Silence. Talking about personal experiences like this is never easy, but mental health struggles continue into illness, fear, stress, grief, and conversations that are deserved more attention. If this episode resonated with you in any way, I hope that it reminds you that your feelings are way more than valid, and that you do not have to carry absolutely anything alone. There's people to speak to. If you are struggling, please consider speaking to someone you trust, or even reaching out to organisations such as Mind or Samaritans, and there is many more that will be there to support you. Thank you so much for listening to Beyond the Silence, and remember, healing often begins when the silence ends.